Hi everyone and welcome back to the Academy of Bel Canto. My name is Joseph Cianciulli. I am the founder of the Academy of Bel Canto and the host of the Mystery Bel Canto podcast. Today we are talking about the actual voice building process, what it is, some exercises for releasing the voice and why we do so. So when you are building the voice within a Bel Canto mindset, within a Bel Canto approach, an approach that came from that time period where singers emerged from their studios with a very, very different quality of singing than today. When you approach the voice from that standpoint, you are always approaching the voice from a simpler mindset that relies on release from a simple closure of the folds through the posture and through a shape of a specific vowel. With the old schools, we were working specifically from the Italian vowels of a, e, o, and u. Now, of course, within the e vowel, we have the open e, and we also have the closed e, like in vedo. So what do we encourage in the voice when we're building from that standpoint? Well, we have to have a comprehensive understanding as teachers of what specific vowel and consonant combinations do for the voice to either assist or hinder growth. We have to understand what direction, exercise direction, whether you're rising or descending does. We also have to have an understanding of what exercise speed does, so moving slower or faster. Okay, so right off the bat, we must have a specific understanding when it comes to the male voice, that the male voice is built from the bottom to the top. Okay, the female voice isn't necessarily built from the top to the bottom, but they can approach the upper voice much sooner than the male voice in many cases. So why do we approach the male voice from the bottom to the top? Well, when I say the bottom, I mean our speaking register. So speaking voice in most Americans is going to be muscled, okay? Because of the way that we speak, because of the way that we move breath, because of the sitting in the sound, because of the way we sit in the voice, we encourage muscular tension and muscular involvement in order to help the speech process. And because of that, the first step in every teacher's lesson will be to release the speaking voice. So how do we do that? Well, first we have to find where they're speaking. So typically you're going to have conversation with your student when they first walk in the door, and you need to be playing on the piano to find out where exactly they are speaking around that area. You don't need to tell them this. We don't need to lead with ego and start, explaining everything that we do, but you need to know why you're doing this. Okay, you need to know that you need to find around where they're speaking, and you'll hear maybe they get a little excited and they rise up a little bit, but that's around where they're starting from. That is where you start your exercises because you want to release the speaking voice first. Then you would take them typically down a little bit, maybe 1 to 2 half steps, or 1 to 2 whole steps, and then back up. Now, if you're starting with a releasing exercise, it will always be descending. And why do we start exercise with a releasing exercise? Because in Bel Canto, the idea is to encourage freedom and release in the voice. So we want to encourage freedom in the speaking voice first. So with that speaking note being the bottom of our first exercise, you could take them in a 3-note pattern, 3, 2, 1, or 5-note, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When you move faster with speed, so if I do, for example, wah, 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 okay? Wah, wah, wah. If I move slower, it's more challenging to the folds. It's more of an opportunity for the singer to get involved with the sound. So when you go slower, typically you hear this. Wah, 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 or wah, 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 wah. They get involved with vibrato. Oftentimes they'll get involved with muscular tension if they're used to holding muscle or trying to hear themselves. When you move faster, it's hard for them to do that. So you move faster. Wah, 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 wah. Okay? Now, what are we doing when we do this? One, we're not allowing them to re-grip or re-grab in the muscular tension, with muscular tension in the body. But 2, you're giving you as the teacher an opportunity to see how their body reacts to the speed. If they struggle with it, certain things are not coordinating correctly, it's because they're holding some type of tension somewhere, whether it's in the neck. Sometimes you'll see singers go like this, wah, wah, or wah, wah, wah. Yeah, you have to be aware of how they're holding their posture for the sound to move through. Yes? So, why do we start with releasing exercise? 1, because we want to release the speaking voice first. 2, because we want to identify if there's any physical hindrances to the sound releasing. And now, why or what makes a descending exercise a releasing exercise specifically? Well, you have to understand. When you start from a note, the folds are in some type of closed position. Well, as you move down in pitch, more of the folds are vibrating. Yes? See, what happens is I'm going to hold my folds like this. These are my vocal folds, okay? And they vibrate like this. Yes? Now, as you move down, you start from a closed position, and just maybe this part of the fold is vibrating, the middle to the end. Yeah? Well, when you go down, you're allowing more of the fold to vibrate. Yes? As opposed to when you go up, the folds are still vibrating, but more of the folds are connecting as you move up in pitch, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. As you move up in pitch, more of the vocal folds are touching. So if you have your folds here, as you move up, they're still vibrating this way, but maybe as you go up, more of the intrinsic musculature is holding the folds or part of the fold together. And as you go up more and more and more, it's challenging the folds. Why? Because when more of the fold is touching, you have subglottal pressure, you have pressure from the lungs coming up, and there's less space. There's a smaller opening for the air to move. So it tests how stable the folds are. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I will go into that in more depth in a later lesson. And I'll probably take some of my anatomical tools out to help you. But as always, this is not something you would explain to the student. You just want to know as a teacher that physically it feels more releasing to go from a pitch and descend down, especially with speed, than it is to rise in pitch, and it's even harder to rise in pitch at a slow speed. So when you start exercise, you're always going to be releasing the voice first, and you start at the speaking register. Okay, so now what vowels do we use and what consonants do we use? Well, it's understood in Bel Canto training that consonants that articulate further from the folds are more releasing. So we have wa, which is the furthest from the folds. We have then L and V, la and va, which move a little bit closer to the folds. We then move further back with ya. You could also use, M and N, which are the next closest from wa. But essentially we have wa, M, N, L, V, and then you start working your way back until you get to the sound N, NG, like in sing. And NG is used to encourage a natural position in the pharynx. Not a closed position, but when you release from that position correctly with posture, you encourage an optimal space in the pharynx. Okay, so we typically want to use a consonant that is further from the folds because it's less invasive. Why is it less invasive? Because as you articulate closer and closer to the larynx, muscles have more of a tendency to get involved when they haven't learned what freedom feels like. So we would use wa. Okay, W, wa, wa, wa. Now, what exercise would we, what vowel would we use? So, again, this is in the Bel Canto mindset. So people who say, no, that's not correct, within their mindset it is, because of the way the tongue is working. The open vowels like a are more open or more freeing than, say, e. When the sides of the tongue work up more on the sides, so if you say a and you say e, you'll feel more of the sides of the tongue up on the sides. For e, it's tugging on the larynx, which is encouraging a closer connection of the musculature of the folds. Yes? So when you use a more closed vowel, why is it harder or why is it more invasive, do I say? Well, because you're testing how well the connection can hold naturally on that vowel without having to hold with tension. When I do a falling oo, for example, and just allowing the sound to fall without being assisted, that little small place of oo that I feel at the nares bone, yes, which is it's used therapeutically in Bel Canto to massage the folds down. That little oo should not be muscled. Most singers will muscle it if the connection is not there. If you cannot make the connection and you squeeze, you'll hear something like, and that's not what you want. You stop the breath, you bring the posture forward, and you release into a very small place. When you follow it down. Yes? So you would use a vowel like a in the lower middle voice to release the lower middle voice. Yes? This is how you start your lessons. So if I was using va, if it was a very, very much beginner student, we'd have to work on the vowels first. We'd have to work on breath and postural alignment first to get that kind of ingrained in their body, get them feeling what it feels like to be in the correct singing posture, feel what it feels like to hold the correct positions in the mouth for the vowels, and then you can start something like wah, 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 on a 3-note pattern. Wah, 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 wah. Now, when you hear something build up, so for me, wah, 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 something builds up there. You take them back down. When the singer hasn't been taught how to feel appoggiare, you're only working release in the lower middle voice. And this is why singers always, in Bel Canto, or at least male singers, their voices are built from the bottom to the top. You build release in the lower middle voice, you build a sensation to release in the lower middle voice, and a closer connection to the folds, and you can take that closer connection up into appoggiare safely, and then up into passaggio safely. Okay, so this has been a little introduction on how to start a new student for lessons. You already know about postural alignment. You know about the breath coordination that we teach. You already know about release of resonance through the posture, or that idea, that concept. You understand that we're trying to bring a closer connection to the folds as we sing, a natural position of the folds. Now, when we approach repertoire, it's important, just to recap, that we understand that vowel choice, consonant choice, direction of exercise, and the speed of exercise all can influence how the voice responds, how the folds respond when you're singing or when you're encouraging release in your student. So this has been a little introduction, but if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us at vocalmastery1@gmail.com, or as always, you can take a look at our books, our online courses, as well as our workshops and our private lessons at www.academyofbelcanto.com.